talk about today is we're going to talk about circulation pumps, how to identify them. There's all kinds of different circ pumps you can see, all kinds of different configurations, different sizes, and then there's things that look like circ pumps that are not circ pumps. So stay tuned. I'm going to explain how you figure out what we got. All right, every one of these that you see is a circulation pump except for this one. This one, and what denotes a circulation pump, let me start there, is these are low flow pumps. They're usually going to be 25 to 35 gallons per minute, and that's about it. All they're designed to do is circulate the water through the heater. They're designed to circulate the water through this type of heater. Usually not this style though, usually a low flow style, which is going to be a real thin heater. These pumps, the purpose of them is they're low amperage. You're usually an amp or less, or an amp and a half at the very most. So they're very low energy consumption pumps, and that's the point of them, is they just run 24/7, 365. Now, the way you're going to identify is, first you need to identify if yours is a 48 frame. All these are what we call 48 frame pumps. This is a 48 frame as well. The difference is the amperage on this pump. This has a heat jacket on it, and it actually runs to heat. It actually circulates the water over the motor. The difference is when I look at my label right here, this is 9.9 amps. So 9.9 amps is not a circulation pump, that is a jet pump, although it is a one speed. Most circulation pumps are one speeds. So all of these pumps, when you look at them, I'm going to look at this label. This label says that it is 115 volt, it's 1.3 amps, it is 1/15 horsepower. This one is 230 volts and it's 0.63 amps. So the higher the voltage, the lower the amperage. This one is a Chinese version, what we call an LX pump, and this one is 1 amp. So your label is going to tell you a whole lot. So if you're looking for a 48 frame, they're generally going to be under the aqua-flo name. It'll be Flowmaster, it'll be uni-might would be a waterway version, but they're going to all look very similar, and they're going to come with the side discharge wet end. This type, which is a newer wet end, and this can be turned any direction like that. This is a side discharge, and then you've got the 1.5" center discharge. Usually a circulation pump is going to be what we call 1.5". So if you measure across the threads like that, it's going to measure about 2 3/8. Each one of these measures about 2 3/8 across. So these are all 1.5", and the union is going to look like this. Normally, it's going to be 1.5" thread, which is 2 3/8, and it'll be 1.5" here. You'll find some tubs like Master Spas will have this, and they'll actually have this converted to 2-inch. There'll be a fitting on here that screws into a 2-inch union. So you got to know what you're working on. The other thing you need to know is you need to know what your voltage is, and just look on your label. This one says 115 volt, this one says 230 volt. So if you know that it's 48 frame like this, 1.5" side discharge, and it's 115 volt, and it is a circulation pump, this is easy to find. You can find this under the aqua-flo, you can find it under waterway, you can find it under the LX like this right here, and this will interchange. The biggest difference between these two, I'll point these out, is the size of this. If you look, I've got another wet end here that's the same as this, and if you put it here, you can see that this is a little bit taller than that. You can interchange this one with this one as long as this part of it is flexible, the hose that goes here, if it's a flex hose and that kind of thing. If it's hard pipe, you'd want to stay with this. Now this is going to be much more expensive than this, but this is much better than this. This is aqua-flo, this is LX. This is a Chinese version, this is an American-made aqua-flo. You're going to find aqua-flo waterway. That's going to be your two main ones. The next thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at Langs. Langs look like this, and they usually have a cord. This particular one would have probably come off of a Sundance or a Jacuzzi, and it's going to have these little plugs on the end like this. You'll also see circulation pumps have the amp plug like this. They'll have the newer style J&J, which would look something like this, or the older style J&J, which would look something like this, or they could also come with a wall plug like this. You'll see some old Leisure Bays with Grumpus pumps in it with just a wall plug. So there's some different things. Usually on the Langs you would go by the number on here. This particular one's a SM909 NHW 18 and with a 3/4 inch barb on it. So if you measure across a 3/4 inch barb, it's going to actually measure more than 3/4. It's going to measure about 7/8. You'll also see these two are 3/4 inch, which is standard. You'll also see these with a 1 inch barb, which is going to measure about 1 1/4. The difference between them is just a larger barb. But they make so many different ones of these that you'll see that they have, you have to base it off of the voltage, of course, 115 volt. This one's 115, this one's 230. You also have to base it off of the phase. If you're in Europe, you've got to have a 50 hertz. If you're in America, you'd have a 60 hertz. Or in the different countries use different hertz. But these are normally, all these circuit pumps are normally going to have 3 wires. Black, white, green. Black is hot. White is hot if it's 220. If it's 110, white is ground, or ground, and then ground is ground. White would be neutral. So the next one that you would see is you would see a Grumpus. This is a Grumpus. I like the Grumpus Pump. It actually sits like this. I didn't put the bottom on it, but I like the Grumpus Pump. These are all 1 inch by 1 inch. But I like this. I think it's a better pump than the Lang. That's just my personal opinion. And you can actually retrofit them. You can change them. The problem is if you'll notice, the Lang goes this way, the Grumpus goes that way. So if you're going to use this in place of this, what you would have to do is either turn this face where it's straight up like that, and you can see they're not offset much. The other thing that you would have to do is, if it's to the side like that, what you could do is take this and actually do a loop back around and hook it. Now the thing that I'll tell you is you can interchange 1 inch for 3/4 by taking the 1 inch pipe that goes on here and slipping it inside. 3/4 will actually slip directly inside 1 inch. So that's something you could do, and the Grumpus really only has 2 styles. Or 2 types. They're 115 volt and 220, and you just look on the back of it and you see it shows 115 here, 220 would say 220 there, but they're all the same. The old ones were gray, the new ones are black. And that's the same thing you'll notice on these Langs. The old ones are red, a lot of the new ones are black. Doesn't change anything. It's just the way it is. I actually prefer this pump over these pumps, and I think it's better, and it's actually a little bit less money, but it's an option. It's a thing that you can buy this, but you have to have a changeover kit. I do offer the kit to retrofit this in the place of these. But if you want to stay with this, look in my store and find your number or a crossover number and just order that and it'll be right. Now the next thing you do is it's not going to come with the cord. So you're going to have to take the cord out, and back here there's these little pinch things with the screwdriver. You just unscrew them and change the wires over, put the cap back on, and you're ready to go. This you'll have to have crimp connectors and that kind of stuff to hook it up. Another type circulation pump, this is rare but they're out there, is what we call a uni-might. This is made by Waterway, and this is 1 inch by 1 inch, and you'll usually see it's got a 1 inch union on it, and the union can come in all kinds of different options. You can see that one actually has a barb on it. This one they glued a 90 barb in. I also see them with the plumbing glued directly in. If you measure across a 1 inch, it measures about 2 inches. So inside of here would be about 2 inches across, 2 inches across the threads. uni-might is a uni-might. You got 115 volt, you got a 220, and that's pretty much it. They're interchangeable, and that's the end of that. So if you have a pump that has a big wet end like this, that if you measure across it, it's 3 inches. This is not a circulation pump. This is what we call a jet pump, which is a completely different thing than what we're talking about. So if you have a jet pump, these actually run through the heater as well, but they don't run 24/7. Then you need to go over to the jet pump section. If you need a circulation pump, jet pumps are generally, the main one is generally going to be a 2-speed that runs through the heaters. So what you would do is look in the jet pump section. You have 1-speed pumps, but not usually that run through the heater, but there's exceptions. The exception would be like a jacuzzi whirlpool tub. They'll have 2 single-speed pumps in them, where one runs through the system, and when the other one comes on, it creates high speed. That's the exception, but the way you can determine if you're looking for a jet pump or a circulation pump is the amperage. If it's less than an amp and a half, it's a circulation pump. If it's 6 amps, 7 amps, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, that's a jet pump. So look today, determine if you have a side discharge, a center discharge, and they're all going to be 48 frame. They don't make circulation pumps in 56 frame, although I have seen them with a sticker on it that says 56. This particular one, I've seen them on like cow spas, it'll say 56 on it, but that's not correct. The way you can tell if it's 48 frame, if you just take a measuring tape and you measure across, it's going to measure about 5 7/8 across the width of the back of it, about 5 7/8 right here. So that is definitely a 48 frame. So if you have a 48 frame, what you're going to do is look for your style. You can't necessarily go by the numbers that are on there on the pumps, because they change and they update them and do different stuff, so it can lead you the wrong way. The main thing is voltage, 115 volt 230, that it is in fact a circulation pump, that it is center discharge, it is side discharge, or if it is a what we call a low flow type circ, which is going to be a Lang or a Grumpus, or it's going to be a tiny Mite, which is a waterway product. Buy today with confidence. Go to my website. If you click right here, it's going to take you to the circulation pump page on my website, and you can browse around. I am constantly adding videos and adding stuff. I'm going to try to do a little more in depth on each one of these styles of circulation pumps so you can learn a little bit more about it. Buy today. I am the Spa Guy. We are Hot Tub Parts of America.